For great Pokemon TCG product and prices, check out ccgcastle.com.
What's up, guys? Aiden here, and welcome to this week's of Deck Tech Thursday, where this week I'll be profiling you guys my Mega Audino Garbodor deck. Now, I've been testing this deck for a little bit, and with the whole fairy engine, it actually works really well. This was actually inspired from my buddy Shadow TCG, who originally got top 8 at the ARG with the Mega Altaria deck. And it just grew some inspiration to this, and I played around with it a bit, and I did really like it. So, without any delay, we're gonna get right into it and why it is that I like this deck so much. Alright, so we start off here with 3 copies of Audino and 3 copies of Mega Audino. Now, these are both colorless types. Would have been cool if this turned into a fairy, but hey, what can you do? Now, the EX is really nothing to look at. It's your standard type of EX. Bad EX, just made them to evolve into your Mega. Now, what your Mega does is the attack Magical Symphony. For 3 colors, energy does 110, and if you play a supporter during your turn, you get to do 50 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Any one of them. Doesn't have to be specifications like EX, non-EX, or anything like that. So, really adds on the damage very quickly. It's like Fright Night Yveltal, except it 10 less, but it hits anything. And you already play supporters every turn, just about every turn as it is, so it's really easy to make it work. Matter of fact, this actually won Worlds last year, for those of you who don't know, so Audino definitely has some potential. Really hasn't been looked at anymore since this new format, but that really doesn't make it any less good. And as I said, we also run the Garbodor line, 2 Trubbish, and 2 Garbodor. Now, for Garbodor, it's mainly just shutting down all other abilities, and it's just straight pummeling. Works very similar to Yveltal Garbodor, where it's just shutting down everything and just hitting them hard. That's exactly what this is, except not only are you hitting hard they're active, but you're hitting hard on the bench as well. So, again, very standard. A lot of decks now are playing Garbodor, far outside just Yveltal. So, expect, if you guys are going to any tournaments like, say, locals, regionals, or heck, even the Georgia regionals, I would expect to see a lot of this. And also League Cups, too. Any tournament you guys are playing, expect to see Garbodor. And last up for our Pokemon lineup, some very standard stuff here. 2 copies of Bboc and 1 copy of Hoopa. Hoopa, you always play in any EX deck. Shaman's just for the extra draw, of course. Very standard, obvious reasons. And that does it for our Pokemon lineup. Very standard. And for our supporter lineup, we play 4 copies of Professor Sycamore and 3 copies of N. Very standard there. Your main draw supporters of the deck. Now, even though this is good now, I really can't wait for Sun and Moon, because that's going to boost up a lot of decks, I feel, including this one, because of Professor Kukui, which I am really excited about Professor Kukui, I'm not going to lie, guys. Even though I think he's really weird in the game, his card is so good. For those of you who don't know what it does, it basically completely makes Giovanni obsolete, to where you draw 2 cards and your active Pokemon does 20 more damage. So, play that, and not only you're doing 130 with your Audino, but you're also doing 50 to the bench as well. So, you're going from a total amount of damage of 160 to 180, which is just amazing. So, there's it for that. And next up for supporters, I rerun 2 copies of Lysander, very standard as well. And our 2 one-up supporters here, we run 1 copy of Pokemon Center Lady and 1 copy of Delinquent. A little bit more supporters than usual, but it's just to take advantage of Audino's full effect of the attack to be able to hit 50 on the bench. So, Pokemon Center Lady, as I said, this is the fairy version, so there's a bunch of healing going on here as well, and this definitely helps it with it quite a bit. And also Delinquent's a very good tech in a lot of decks as well. So you can either use this to discard either a stadium you're not going to use, or bump your opponent's stadium, and they have to discard 3 cards. So with this, if you play this supporter on your turn, not only are you making your opponent discard 3 cards, you're also hitting your opponent's bench for 50. So they are not going to have a good turn with that. Alright, and for supporters, that about does it. Now, next up, we're going to go into our items. 4 copies of Ultra Ball and 4 copies of VS Secret. the same old every single time. Practically no deck could go without these, with the very few exceptions like Gyarados or Greninja. But even they have 4 VS Seekers, so let's just say the 4 VS Seekers will always stay in decks no matter what. Don't care what you're playing, you will always see 4 VS Seeker in a deck. It's just too good not to have. And especially now, since the price of these has gone up a lot thanks to those Battle Arena decks. So for those of you guys who are working on a bit more of a budget, don't worry, VS Seeker can now fit within your budget. And same in Ultra. Ultra's been reprinted countless times, and some of these are even in wow, I almost said structured, in themed decks as well, so very, very easy to get a hold of these. Alright, next up here, we run 3 copies of Trainer's Mail, very, very standard and obvious as well, just to be able to search for our stuff. Mainly our supporters here, because you get all your power from your supporters in this deck, so Trainer's Mail is an absolute must in the deck. And next up, of course, we need our Spirit Links here as well. 3 copies of Orlando Spirit Link, just because ending your turn when you evolve is just really, really bad, and I'm not really sure why they ever did that in the first place, because in the video game, your turn doesn't end when you Mega Evolve, so why in a card game? Ugh, I don't know. Maybe it was just to keep them from being broken, which is so weird, because even without this, there are plenty of Megas that would not be broken. I don't know. It's Pokemon for you, what can I say? Alright. And next up for our items, we run 3 copies of Fairy Drop. Now, what Fairy Drop does is you heal 50 damage from one of your Pokemon that has a Fairy Energy attached to it. So yes, we are running basic Fairy Energy in this deck, because as I said, this is the Fairy version. So with this, not only are you healing with the Fairy Drop, but as you guys saw earlier, with the Pokemon Center Lady right here. So let's say in one turn you decide to play a Fairy Drop and a Pokemon Center Lady. That right there is 110 damage you're healing off the Audino right then and there. And if you want to get even more crazy, say you took a lot of damage and you have all 3 of these in your hand, 50, 100, 150, boom. Almost everything your opponent had worked so hard to deal with you, all of a sudden is gone now, which is completely crazy. And it's really hard to one-shot Audino, because considering its only weakness right now is fighting, and there's not a whole lot of that right now, so not many decks can one-shot Audino, and for just to heal it all back after that work they put into damage in the Audino is just devastating. So definitely a great card in here as well. Not to mention, if you don't want to take my word for it, take the Fairy Mewtwo deck that placed very highly in the last Dallas Regionals that did a similar strategy and had the 3 copies of Fairy Drop as well. So just in case you guys don't trust my word for it, there you go, you have a reliable source for this. Alright, and next up here we have 3 copies of Mega Turbo. Very standard in any Mega deck whatsoever. You really cannot run any Mega deck without Mega Turbo. It's so good. Probably one of the best cards they ever came out with for Megas. Alright. And last up for our items is going to be 3 copies of Floatstone, just for our Garbodors, and 1 for probably Hoopa. I mean, you can attach it to a Shaman too, just so you don't have to waste an energy to retreat it. But honestly, it's better to waste 1 energy than 2. And even though we do have Fairy Garden in here, Stadium Wars are in fact a thing. So you just always want to be prepared. Can never really be too careful. And that does it for our items. And as I just said, for our stands, we run 2 copies of Fairy Garden and 1 copy of Parallel City. Now, the Fairy Garden here is just to give us free retreats, because Audino, I like you and all, but that is a big retreat cost right there. That's our whole attack energy right there, and I do not want to waste it just to retreat. So Fairy Garden is definitely useful for that. And Parallel City, just because all decks really need Parallel City nowadays, especially with Volcanion being so big. So, and really against Volcanion, you could use it both ways, to either limit their bench, to limit the amount of Volcanions they can bench, or to reduce their damage by 20. So yeah, Parallel City has almost become a staple in any deck nowadays. And also, it really helps against that one rogue Mega Rayquaza. So, even though you're not really seeing too much Rayquaza, this is why. This is why you're not seeing Rayquaza. Alrighty, and last but certainly not least, our energy count. So you're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies of basic fairy energy, and our 4 copies of double colorless energy. So essentially what you really want to do is, say you get an Audino knocked out and you have to get up here. I'm just gonna show you guys how this neat little strategy is supposed to work. So typically it takes about maybe 2 turns to power up an Audino, but let's just say that Audino you powered up gets knocked out and you're just stuck with this one right here, right? You got your Spirit Link on, so all of a sudden you just go into your Mega here, play a Mega Turbo, get that discard energy from that knocked out Audino, and then attach for turn double colorless, and boom, out of nowhere you've got just a fully powered Mega Audino ready to go and able to play whatever supporter you want, whether it be draw support, Lysandre, Delinquent, or even just heal up a bench Pokemon. Whatever. So anyways, that's the deck today, and I gotta say, this has some pretty good recovery. That is one strength I will say Mega Audino definitely has. It's got some really amazing recovery, which a lot of the decks in our format do lack. So this is definitely, I believe this is definitely an underestimated deck, because this deck really puts in the work at times, especially against the right matchup. Whew. All right, so enough of not being me blathering on. If you guys like this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're all new to the channel. And stick around for tomorrow where I take on Professor K's Vespiquen deck, and let's see what happens. Will I finally end my losing streak? Oh, I didn't. No, okay. I'm above that. I am above making that joke. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I had to. I guess yeah, I'm not above making a joke after all. Alright, guys. This has been N with the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and I will see you guys tomorrow.